How you ask is important. With Typeform, it's everything. If you're lazy or got better things to do, pick a template and get on with your day. Ask any kind of question you want, because business doesn't have to mean business as usual. That means you can make it brainy and efficient, or silly and fun. Your Typeform, your rules. Make every interaction count, from start to send. You can keep things simple and tidy if you want, or use the image gallery and look for eye candy. And others zig, you zag. Connect Typeform straight into your workflow and save your future self some headache. When you're done, just share the link or embed it into your site without writing a single line of code. With Typeform, you can pick someone's brain and look like a pro. It's easy to use and free to get started.
Welcome to Airtable. With Airtable, you can organize anything. Projects, customers, ideas, you name it. It's as straightforward as a spreadsheet, but gives you the power of a database to work exactly how you want to work. Whether you're managing a successful record label, planning an upcoming move, or wrangling all of your team's deadlines for an upcoming rocket launch, it's easy to organize anything that you can imagine. It's not just numbers and text. With Airtable, you can add rich field types like checkboxes, drop-downs, long notes, links to other tables, and even drag-and-drop file attachments, complete with document and image previews. You're not limited to only seeing things in a grid. You can group and organize your records, show them on a calendar, arrange them in a gallery, and embed them onto your website. You can even create and share a form, and the responses will feed directly into Airtable. Use Airtable on your own, or collaborate with a team to get things done. You can tag collaborators and message with them directly in the context of your information. And all your changes are securely saved and instantly synced across all devices and teammates, so you're always on the same page. Airtable. Organize anything you can imagine.
Welcome back, everyone, to No Code Week with Airtable. We have a great workshop planned for you to talk to you about how to integrate and all of the tools and everything that you can use inside of Airtable. We just heard from Typeform, and they showed you how they integrate inside of Airtable. And then today we'll actually hear from Aron, Korenblit, I think I said his name right, and we will go through and talk to you about all the different use cases that you can use for Airtable as well. So excited to have you all here back, and welcome, Aron Korenblit. Did I say your name right?
Laura. It's Korenblit, but that was close enough. That's actually much better than most folks do. So I'll give you a win on that one.
Yeah, man.
Excited to be here.
Fun. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, no, excited to be here. So I am following up what I understand is Nicholas, which is going to be a tough act to follow, but hopefully Airtable will do the heavy lifting for me. And yeah, really excited to kind of give an overview of what Airtable. I'm looking at you because you're like on my secondary screen, so yeah. I'm sorry for folks. So like, I'm really excited to.
You might be over there in this corner, that corner. So I have to move my eyes around, right?
Let me put you front and center here. So yeah, really excited to be here. I'm going to do a quick overview of what Airtable is. It does a lot, as folks saw in that intro. But if folks are listening to this live, I'd love to know what your use cases are. So in Beam or wherever you can kind of communicate to Laurel what your use case is. And I'll start with a quick overview of Airtable, and then happy to take any questions, but excited to dive in here.
Yeah, and I'll see you on the other side as you go through this, and feel free if you need me. I'm in the back. I'm backstage, so I'll let you take it away and share your screen.
Awesome.
All right, see you guys soon.
Cool. All right, so folks should see this quick. I'm going to do a quick introduction to what is Airtable, and then we'll jump into a live build of a quick use case. But again, if you have anything you'd like to build, whether that's a content calendar or CRM, whatever it is, let Laurel know. And I'm happy to adjust this training based on folks joining live. So just to introduce myself, my name is Aron Korenblit. I'm part of the education team at Airtable and have had the joy and pleasure of training thousands of folks on what is Airtable. So I've just got this slide up. We won't be doing a 45-minute training, but we're going to kind of walk through how to use Airtable. So first, before we dive in, so what is Airtable? Airtable is a local platform that lets you build collaborative applications, right? So you can build anything from a simple CRM to a full-on application that you can share with folks. So what's great about Airtable is that there is no floor, no kind of knowledge that you need to get started, and you can level up the base, the kind of application that you're building as you go. So you can add complexity to really map it to your workflow. And there's no ceiling to what it is that you can build in Airtable. So as your knowledge of Airtable and your workflows get more complex, you can adjust your Airtable base to really bend and mold to your workflow. So that no matter what it is you're working on, you can improve it in Airtable. So I actually think, unless folks have any specific questions for Laurel or myself, I'm just going to dive in to a live build in Airtable. What I'm going to try to cover here is first, how do you create your foundation, create a central place to hold all of your information? And then we're going to go ahead and talk about how do you add in your information. And then as we're adding in information, how do you go about and organize that information to quickly and efficiently pull up what you need? And then you can visualize your information in different ways to really be able to see what you need at any moment. And then finally, we'll talk about sharing out this new kind of custom tool that you've built in Airtable. So the use case I'm going to kind of ground this demo in is one that, imagine we're a creative team trying to kind of push projects forward with action items. But again, you could build a CRM, content calendar, really any use case can be created or managed in Airtable. So with that, let's jump into our first step, which is creating our foundation, creating a central place to hold all of our information. So I'm here on airtable.com, and this is what you'll see when you first join Airtable. So we organize in these little colorful icons, which are called bases. Bases are where you hold all of your information, so short for database. And you should really be creating one base for any type of workflow. So in our case, we're going to create a creative project space where we're going to kind of be managing all of our projects. But you can see you can create a content calendar, sales CRM, product planning, and anything else. So let me go ahead and add a base. I'm going to start from scratch, but you can also start with a template or import information from third-party systems, including CSVs. So I'm going to go ahead and start from scratch, and we're going to call this creative projects. And so let's give this a nice little color, nice little emoticon. There we go. And so we've created our base. So just to start off, let me kind of give you the lay of the land here. Bases are organized in tables, and these tables contain information of the same type. And so you should think about your tables as different lists that you need to manage throughout your project. In our case, our first list, that first piece of information, or those first pieces of information that we want to track, are projects. So I'm going to go ahead and create a projects table, and every single record, every single line here is going to be a different project. So you notice that we start off with three let me zoom in here a little bit. I think that's better. We start off with 3 records, but we can add and edit these. So let's say we have 3 projects, 3 creative projects. So first is going to be record a podcast. Let's say our second project is, I don't know, Laurel, if anyone has any ideas. I always kind of blank on these things. Record a podcast, write a blog post. And let's say our third creative project is record an onboarding video. So now I've created my 3 first projects. I can go ahead and add a record. Let's say I have a 4th project. My 4th project would be No Code Week. So video for No Code Week. That's my 4th creative project. So now I have all of my records, all of my projects in my projects table. But when you think about a project, there's probably additional information that you want to track across your project, right? So it's not just their name. There's probably information like a status, a due date, maybe something like a budget. Those feel like important things that we need to track across each one of our projects. So when you think about that, when you hear or think that there are elements you want to track across each project, well, in that case, you need fields. So fields are what let you or allow you to track information across each item in your list. So each record will have many fields that we fill out. So you notice that there is already 3 fields here. Notes, so you can add large notes. Let me make this a little larger here. So record a podcast, you can add script here, right? That's an example of what you can do with the notes field. Attachments let you drag and drop information directly into any record. So let me try to find a little something I can drop in here. Let me go and I'm just drag and dropping from my desktop directly into attachments, and that's adding an image. Let me delete this field and recreate it. So for each project, you probably want to have something like a status, right? So something that tells you where in the pipeline that project finds itself. So to do that, you can add a new field. And Airtable has over 25 different field types to pick from. So in our case, what we want is a status, which is going to be one option among many. So in our case, let's go ahead and add a single select. So this is saying we're going to specify some options and then create a dropdown where we can tag each record with a specific option, our single select. So I'm going to call this status. So I'm naming that field, and then I'm adding options. So let's say the first one is backlog, right? So we're not yet working on that one. Then in progress, and then done. So those are the 3 possible statuses my projects can find themselves in. I'm going to go and color these a little differently. So backlog feels like a light blue. In progress, maybe a blue feels right. Actually, maybe a darker blue. And then done is a nice dark green. So I'm creating that field, and now I can go ahead and tag each project with the right status. In progress, done, and in progress. All right. So I think the other thing that makes sense is maybe a due date for each. Let's go ahead and add a date. A quick tip here, you can always search on our field types. If you don't, you'll find the date right here. You can pick the format. I imagine a lot of you are US-centric or kind of have a local. Let's create that field. And now when we click into that, we can have a specific due date for each one of our projects. So let's put this one is in backlog. So this one's in the future. In progress, let's say it's due on Friday. This one is done, like that. And this one is for next Friday, right? So now we have a due date. Naturally, we also want a start date. There we go, adding there. Let's create that field. I'm just going to move this one. I'm just dragging and dropping, moving over. Now I have a start date and a due date. Let's start this one next Monday. This one we started yesterday. This one was way back March 1st. And then this one is started on Thursday. So now I have a start date, and a due date for each one of our projects. Last field that I'm going to add in here just to really get a sense of our projects is a budget. This is going to be a currency field. I'm going to remove pennies. So now let's say this one's 50,000, 100,000. I don't know why a blog post would cost us 100,000 to write, but we are writing very expensive blog posts. And then this video is going to be 100,000. All right. So now we have our projects. What's important for you watching at home and thinking of, why would I use this tool is, well, ultimately you can reuse these fields for your use case very differently, right? So if anyone wants to drop their use case to Laurel in the chat, and I can kind of keep an eye on that. Actually, can I? There, I'm just opening up. So if anyone drops their use case, you can use these fields for your kind of specific use case. So whether it's, you want to mark as urgent or something like that, tracking leads instead of projects, ultimately you decide how this tool kind of fits your workflow. So we're creating projects, but you can also create contacts, events that you're hosting or things like that. So really up to you, but let's kind of continue down building out our base. So naturally, what I know, natural for me, I don't know if that's natural for you, would be, what are the action items for each one of these projects? What needs to be done for each one of these projects to be considered complete? Now, there's probably different information that you want to track for your action item. Maybe a kind of check mark whether they're done. You're not going to be tracking the same information for your action items as you are for your project. So this creates a new list of information that you need to keep track of. And whenever you're thinking of a new list, that means you want to create a new table. So I'm going to create an empty table. I'm going to call it action items. Let's go ahead and delete these kind of standard fields here. There we go. And let's go ahead and kind of create the action items for our first project, which is, let's say, write a blog post. So again, we're kind of adding in our records. So to write a blog post, we need to pick a writer. We need to do a first draft of, piece. And then we need to stage on a website. Then track analytics. So those are the 4 steps, the 4 action items for that project to be considered complete. So we need to track where we are in that progress for each action item. So let's go ahead and create a complete field, which is going to be a checkbox that just says, is this done or is this not done? Let's give it a little thumbs up. That makes sense. Create field. Let's say we've done this one and we've done this one. Okay. So now, naturally, you also want to think, well, what project is related to what action item? So right now, our 2 tables are not linked together. There's no way to say what action items are tied to which project. And really, this is where Airtable as a database shines. And the reason is that we're going to now be able to say this action is related to this project. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's add a project field. And let's link to another record. We're going to go ahead and link to our projects table, creating an association between these 2 tables. So when I create that field, I now have a project field in action items. And in projects, I have an action items field as well. So we've created that field on both sides, if you will. And so now when I click into action items and I have this little plus button, I see all of my existing action items. So I can say write a blog post is associated to pick a writer, first draft of piece, And let's do that one more time, stage on website. So now these things are associated. So I have the action items that relate to a project. So moving over to action items, I have the inverse relationship. So for each action item, I know which project it's associated to. And here, when I click the plus button, I can see all of my existing projects because that relationship is mirrored. So I can associate to write a blog post, and now I have each action item associated to the right project. So for folks who are maybe a tad bit more technical, Airtable is a relational database. It lets you say things in this table are related to things in that table via the linked record. Let me just do that one more time so you really understand what this is. So here, let's say record a podcast. I go into action items. There's nothing here. Well, there's all of our existing action items, but there are none that are associated to record a podcast. So the steps to do that is to find a mic. So that's step one for record podcast. You see that there are no matching records in our action items table. I can click plus, find a record. And now I've created that first action item. Let's say number 2 is find a host. Again, no matching action item. I've created a second action item. If I move to the action items table, I see those 2 associated records. And I can do the same thing from here. So let's say it's record episode 1. That's step 3 of recording a podcast. I can click into the plus button and see all of my existing projects, and I can associate to record a podcast. And if I come back here, I have all 3 of my related action items. So this was just a quick introduction into Airtable as a relational database. And you might be thinking, well, what is the point of this if I'm not tracking projects and action items? So really, Airtable, these basic field types let you create any type of tool. It can create a CRM, a content calendar, event tracker, really, truly anything that requires you to relate information amongst different lists and is needed for a workflow can be built in Airtable. So I do want to get into kind of how to organize and how to visualize information. But before, let's just quickly go into our template gallery here and look at some other examples of what you can build in Airtable. So I'm sure a lot of you are kind of building out CRMs, maybe looking at complex CRM, but Airtable lets you create a very simple or potentially complex CRM that kind of fits the way you work. So here's an example where we have 4 tables: opportunities, interactions, accounts, and contacts. So starting from contacts, these are all the people you've spoken to. And you've got a name, a little check mark to say whether it's a VIP, email, all of that information. And then contacts roll up into accounts. So we have a linked record to say, Eric Jackson works at Aspoli, is in the chemical industry. It's 11 to 50 person company. And these are single selects. So single selects are not only for denoting status, but really allow you to tag any record with a specific piece of information. And then those accounts are tied to opportunities. So opportunities is kind of the deal level. And here you're tying them to accounts and assigning an owner. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Level of priority, and then a status for your pipeline. So again, taking these very simple basic field types and creating something completely different. So I just wanted to quickly give you an overview of a sales CRM, but you can build a content calendar, campaign tracker, product roadmap, and truly track any type of information in Airtable. So let's go back into our creative projects. And so we've done that first step, which was adding in our information. Let's talk about how we organize this information. So imagine if you're tracking contacts, you could imagine a world in which you have thousands of contacts. So it becomes important to organize this information in a way that makes it easy for us to quickly and efficiently get what we need. So I want to bring your attention to this sidebar, this view bar, toolbar, view bar, I'm not sure. uh, where you can organize what you're looking in different ways. So remember at the beginning, I did increase the row height. We can make that a little taller. Lets you see the information in one glance. Let's keep it at medium. That is one I like to work in. And then let's imagine we want to sort by the due date. That feels very natural. So I'm sorting by the due date. You see that those records organize according to the sort we've specified. Let's imagine that actually, you know what, we need a little more time for this project. Let's move it to the 16th. You'll notice that that reorganizes automatically, keeps the sort in place. Then we can group our information by any single select or other kind of information. I like to sort by single select, group by single select, so I can see each project according to where it is in our pipeline. So I can group that by status. Let's move this to the front. So now I have each record according to the status it's been tagged by. And let's imagine I'm kind of want to do a way of looking at my information where I don't really want to focus in on things that are done. So what I care about are things that are in backlog or in progress. I can filter. So add a filter where status is any of backlog or in progress. So what I've done there is I filtered out what's done. I haven't deleted it. I've simply hidden it. Okay. Next, so let's imagine I'm kind of creating what's backlog and in progress. There's probably some information here that's not relevant to me at all times, like specifically status. So we're organizing by status so I can hide that field. There we go. We can hide notes, maybe attachments as well. So now I've got this like little way of viewing my information that is very convenient to the way that I work. And so we can go ahead and save this view. So views are simply ways to look at your information. So we've got it's called grid view. So let me call this in progress and backlog. Now I have this view, I've saved it. And if I create a new view, so I'm just hovering over, create a grid view, you'll notice that all of my settings, my view settings reset. So I'm going to call this all projects. So views let you create specific ways of looking at your information. And you can create as many views as you'd like so that everyone can kind of look at your or their information, what they need out of your table. So here I've got in progress and backlog. And then when I switch over, I see all of my projects. So if you're wondering what is, what should you create views for? And it's truly any information that you expect to come back to regularly. Maybe action items that are past due, people who owe you money, projects that are urgent, deals that you have to close to be able to get that funding round. Whatever information that you expect to come back to regularly and is important for your workflow usually is a good candidate for a view. Okay, so I think we've done create foundation, add your information, organize your information. So 2 more steps here. Let's go into visualize your information. So far, we've been looking at our information in this kind of grid view way of looking at the world, right? So we've been looking at almost like a spreadsheet type way of looking at our information, but there may be different ways of looking at your information that are more convenient for your workflow, whether that's through a calendar or organized by status. So let's go into the view picker here and look at a few more views. So these are simply different ways of visualizing your information. So first I want to introduce is the Kanban. This lets you organize information according to a single select. So stacks your information according to that single select. So let's call this, organize this by status. So now instead of viewing my information row by row, it's now organized into my kind of buckets according to that single select. And what's great about this is that this is a working view. So I can go backlog to in progress. So I've updated that information. And if I go back to in progress, you can see that record a podcast is now in progress. And if I extend here and update its status to backlog, you'll see that that change is reflected here. But if I go back to the Kanban, you'll see that it's reflected here as well. So that's one example. So let me know if you're a fan of the Kanban view. I am very much a fan of Kanban, but I will tell you my favorite view is actually the calendar view. So calendar view is as advertised, creates a calendar based off of dates. So let's say we want a start date to be where, actually due date feels more relevant. So due date, there we go. This is when different projects are due. So coming back to our toolbar here, we can color this according to its status. And we can also move things just like we did in Kanban. I can update information. So let's say video for No Code Week is actually due on the 26th. We see that information is changed here. And if I go to in progress and backlog, video for No Code Week is now due the 26th. So those are some examples of views that you can create. So you can create calendar view, grid view, Kanban. There's a few others, Gantt, form, gallery. So just some examples. I do see a question in the chat around embedding. So you can share any view and then embed it onto your website. So this gives you a little bit, a snippet of code. It's an iframe that you can then embed this information to show whatever information you want. So a good example is if you go to my own website, I have a calendar view of my streaming schedule, right? So this is actually an Airtable embed, and you can click in and get all the information around a stream. So it's an example of how you can take your kind of information from Airtable and expose it on your website. There's a question on how you can speed that up. That's really dependent on your own website's infrastructure. This is a simple iframe. So there's nothing you can do to speed up the loading of this specific iframe apart from, doing things on your website. Cool. Okay. So we've now visualized our information. Our last step here in this quick overview of Airtable is how to share your tool with the rest of your team. So let's imagine that we want to assign team members to this specific kind of projects, right? That kind of makes sense. So what we can do, let's go ahead and insert a collaborator field. So we're going to call this project owner. It's going to be a collaborator field. This creates a drop down of everyone who you've shared the base with. So in my case, I've shared it with myself and Michaela. So I'm going to be responsible for the video. Michaela does the next one. I'm responsible for podcast, where blogs are managed by our good friend Sohail. So to invite Sohail to make sure that he appears in this dropdown, we can go ahead and share this base with Sohail. So I'm going to go ahead and write Sohail's name. I can invite them, but then I can give them different levels of access. So creator is someone who you expect to build the base alongside you, add fields and tables. Editor is someone who's just going to edit the information, and commenter and read-only will get to comment or view the information. So, oops, I clicked out of there too quickly. Let's get Sohail back. Sohail's a creator. I trust Sohail on this base. And then I see Sohail in the dropdown. So now we have kind of ownership across the team in terms of who's responsible of what. And I can also create a Kanban based on who's responsible. So I can reassign projects and quickly get a sense of workload. So this is the fastest Airtable kind of overview I can provide, and really kind of covering the 5 mainly basic things around Airtable. Now, I know that a lot of you have different use cases, have different levels of expertise or want to have different levels of expertise. So Laurel, happy to open it up to any specific questions or general questions around Airtable that folks are asking.
Yeah, for sure. I know there were some questions around being able to sync your information and automations. So
Okay.
I guess we can start there. How do you go about creating like the custom notifications and automate with your Airtables?
Yeah, no, totally. So yeah, let me talk through that and let me know if this makes sense. So so let's imagine we want to I don't know, send a notification to a reviewer, right? Or when something is soon to be due. So in Airtable, you can create custom trigger action sequences in terms of automations using automations in the top right. So actually some examples that you're kind of send a custom notification, send a weekly digest, post to Twitter, send a Slack message. Let's create a custom automation, right? So I'm going to call this send to project owner. I guess, yeah, send to project owner. It's going to be what we call this automation. And then every automation has a trigger. So this is what needs to happen for your automation to be set in motion. So let's say when record matches conditions, which let you say, okay, at this specific moment in my workflow, so when a record has these exact conditions, go ahead and notify that person or, run this automation. So let's run when a project is, let's actually go ahead and do this. Let's add a new status. Sorry, I'm trying to status. And let's call this review. Right, and let's set at least one record in review. And just needs this, but there we go. Okay. Contains where status is review. So this is our trigger. This is what sets the automation in motion. And what we want to do is potentially send it to a Slack channel of editors, right? Like who has a moment to review this project, right? So that's what sets our automation in motion. And what we want to do is potentially send a Slack message. So let me go ahead and go into our Slack, our social campaigns, and say, hey, a new project is in review. Could someone take a look at? And I want the name of that project. I want write a blog post. So I'm going to click the plus button, go into step 1, go into the name. And so it's going to dynamically insert the name of the project into my message. And then direct link. I can even insert the URL. Insert, there we go. Click done. And now I have my automation. So whenever a project goes into review, it's going to send a Slack message to the team asking for a review. So very important, turn it on. That's one of the biggest mistakes that I see. Let me see if I can open up my Slack. So while that's happening, so now I have it on. So when a record goes into review, it's going to send a Slack message. Let's say video for No Code Week is in review. There we go. It's currently running. So it should be working. And then it ran successfully. If I go over to social campaigns, I see, hey, a new project is in review. Could someone take a look at video for No Code Week? And then clicking here brings me to that example. So really a lot you can do with Airtable automations, really a wide variety of triggers. And you can even trigger when you receive an Outlook email, Google Calendar invite for tracking notes and things like that. And you have a wide array of actions that you can do. So you can do things in Airtable, send a Slack message, send an email, Google Sheets, post to Jira, post to Twitter, really a wide range. So if you're interested in learning more, do recommend airtable.com/webinars. about where we have a recorded webinar of me going deep into automations. Laurel, did that answer the question? Any other things that we should cover before?
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about the different designs, right? What are some of the typical and most used bases that people are using? I know that you talked a little bit about the calendar view, but what do you find that people find the most use in with that?
Yeah.
And before you answer that as well, really cool. What we're realizing here, everyone, is that not only can you take your idea that you're working on, your no code app or your web-based app, and utilize Airtable to bring in data or to connect it to Typeform and bring in data from questionnaires and forms, but now you can also use this for your internal team, right? So it's no longer just for a company that's just launching something, but it's a good use case for being able to connect these different integrations for your team collaboration and stay in touch there as well. But yeah, that question that I have in terms of the bases.
Yeah, so I'm gonna kind of, I'm unsure if you mean what are good views that people use, right? So what are these things, or what do people build in Airtable? Like what use cases people cover?
Yeah, some of those different use cases that people are covering with those bases
Sure.
that they're creating.
Sure. Yeah, no, so really, I mean, if you go to airtable.com/templates, like when I say you can build anything in Airtable, you truly can build anything in Airtable: content calendar, digital video project tracker, social media calendar, blog. Like these are hundreds of use cases of what folks build. I've done inventory management, and this is an example of internal functionality. I run a weekly stream on Airtable, or just on no code generally. This whole website is run on Airtable. So what I mean by that is I have, my stream is managed in Airtable, and then I take that information in Airtable and sync it to Webflow so that my CMS in Webflow, matches my Airtable base. And so my weekly streams are automatically available on my website, my schedule. All of this is run on Airtable and then is available in Webflow. So you can do kind of external facing information. So anything that kind of requires you to track information can be built, can be used in Airtable. So it's difficult for me to pinpoint an exact use case. There are literally hundreds of them that can be used, but the popular ones you can see here: content calendar, video production, project planning, marketing, but also kind of user-facing information as well.
So this is even a bigger platform, right? So then you would typically get in a normal Excel spreadsheet, right? It has some similar features. And so one of the questions is how do you best utilize the formulas when you're building inside of an Airtable or inside of a base? And how does that differ from possibly the formulas that you would see on a typical Excel spreadsheet?
No. So I think Airtable has this approachability of Excel, right? So I won't lie, when you look at this, it looks like a sheet, but it is a relational database. So that ability to link or say that this relates to that, and then be able to visualize your information in different ways, automation and apps, truly make it not a spreadsheet, but more like an app builder, an internal or external application builder. Now, that great question, Laura, around formulas, which is they actually work very similarly to how formulas work in Excel, with one big distinction. If you're I used to be, I guess I still am an Excel power user, but I used to be more of an Excel power user back when I worked more in finance. And essentially, when I think about a spreadsheet, you would have to cell by cell say what the formula is. You would say, take this cell, add it to that cell, and that would be your formula. In Airtable, it's a little different, but will feel very familiar. So let's say we want to get, budget overhead is a good example. And budget overhead is 15% of the budget. Let's imagine that that's our overhead. And so we want to use a formula field. So the biggest distinction is that you need to define what the formula is for the whole field across every single one of your projects. But it's much more intuitive in that sense where you just say budget. So as I write that out, it gives me my field. So I'm writing out budget. So I say, give me the budget times 0.15 and format that as a currency. So create that field. So now I have a overhead that's automatically calculated. See, I can't edit this. So when I update this, this automatically is updated to match this new budget. So that's one example, a very simple one. So now it's fully updated. Let's imagine that you want to say a review date is always 3 days before the due date. Let me go into a view like this. And so we want to create a review date. Review date. We're going to add a formula field. And we're going to say, okay, we want to add 3 days before. So we need to remove. So I know these formulas by heart because I work at Airtable and in Airtable. But if you click this little learn more, you can see all of the different functions that you can use within a formula field. So date and time functions as an example. So what I want to use is date add. Date add. So adds specified count units to a date time. So give me 10 days after this date in days. So what we're going to do is date add. And we're going to say take the due date. Give me -3 and calculate that in days. So the days is related to this unit right here. So deadline -2 week. That would be 2 weeks before the deadline. So we want 3 days before, and let's remove that time. And there we go. We now have our review date that is always 3 days before the due date. So do encourage folks to, formulas. You can use ifs, you can use concatenates. A lot of what you're familiar with in spreadsheets can be reused or recreated in Airtable, and get a sense of how you can use formulas in Airtable.
Cool. Another question that I had for you that came up was, when should I use a new table versus a view?
It's a good question. Most of the time you want to create a view, right? So let's say you're saying, I want to see a subset of my information. I want to see attendees that showed up. I want to see attendees that haven't paid. Usually you want to create a view. The situation in which you want to create a table is when you're tracking a distinct list of information, right? So let's imagine that we have clients. Clients can be a field, right? So let's say I want to do a single select. I want client, and it's going to be a single select. I can do client 1, client 2, client 3, client 4. I could say client 1 like that, right? Let's say client 1 and client 2. Let's give this client 3, right? So we now have used the field to assign a client, but we may want to track additional information. Let's say you want to track their address. You want to track their email, right? So what you can do is create a new table by turning this into a linked record. So I'm creating a new table, the clients table, save that. And now I have a table that has clients related to the right project. So ultimately, the question is, when should you create a new table? In most situations, you want to create a view, right? So you want to drill into existing information. If you want to track separate information, you can go ahead and create a new table. In most cases, you want to make sure that your new table at least links back to some existing information. That's not necessary. but is an indication that you should be using a new table. So Laurel, hopefully that answers the question. Happy to answer any follow-up on that.
Yeah, that was good. That was actually a really good explanation of that use. Another question that I had was, how can I transfer data from one base to another?
Yeah, great question. So the best way to do that is by setting up an Airtable sync. Let me actually, instead of kind of going through here, let me just show you an example where I've already got it set up. Here's an example with this base. Okay. So sync table lets you share information across different bases. So what this means is that, actually, let me, this is not the right base. This is the right base, if I'm not mistaken. Here we go. Okay. So let's say I'm a marketing team that works with a product team, and the product team is responsible for everything around the piece of furniture, their price, their materials, and they track all of that here in this launches product table in our product roadmap base, right? So what you can do is share a view like I did a moment ago, and then allow syncing to be synced to other bases. So if you preview that, you'll see this use this data, and you could then say, okay, so what base do you want to sync to? So I've already done that. It's right here. And this means that anytime something changes in one base, so let's say this is now the 21st. If I go to my campaign tracker, I sync now. There we go. This has now been updated to the 21st. So this is great for projects that objectives, and you want to kind of create objectives in one base, maybe an employee list, finalize projects, assets, really any information that you want to share across the company, and you have full control over. So anything you hide in this view will not appear in the sync table, and you can configure this view to really kind of adjust it to whatever you want. And note that I did sync now, but on your end, this will happen every 5 minutes automatically. I just didn't want to make you wait 5 minutes. So Laurel, hopefully that answers that. This is the way to sync information across bases in Airtable.
Yeah, and then I had a question that just hit the chat. We manually update videos from Vimeo to our WordPress site. How could we automate this?
Yeah, I'm on Team Webflow. I'm not a WordPress person. That said, for instance, if there's a way that you could so I imagine WordPress has a CMS. And so anytime that if you have all of your information in Airtable, and then that information matches the CMS in WordPress, you can sync that information. So push from Airtable to WordPress in a few ways. So one way is to write a script, right? So you can add a custom script that sends an API call to your WordPress website that says, hey, here's the information for this new website. Again, not sure that that's possible in WordPress. That's how I do it in Webflow. Or you can use a tool like Zapier to say, when it's ready to publish, send it over to WordPress CMS, which will update that information. You can do that as well. That is the extent of knowledge I have about WordPress. I think you're on mute.
I'm on mute. Tell me a little bit more about so what's next? What's the next iteration of Airtable? What do you guys have coming for 2021? What are some of the updates or changes that are happening that people can look forward to, or things that you're working on personally within the organization?
Yeah, I mean, Airtable, I think, we just want to keep, I don't know if keep adding building blocks, but we want, I can't talk about any features that we'll build, but we'll say like we are trying to make Airtable more accessible for everyone across different use cases. So, we recently launched automations, right, in September 2020. We recently launched Sync in 2020 as well, and launched apps, which I didn't talk about, but is the ability to visualize, update, and extend your workflow using third-party apps like Airtable apps and third-party apps. You can even build a custom app. So if folks like Data Fetcher are building apps on top of Airtable so that we can empower every single use case on Airtable. So really, I think it's all about deepening the use cases that are enabled by our platform. So sync, making that more complex. Like this is a one-way sync for now. Having more and more apps and making it easier to build apps and making Airtable more accessible. Having more triggers and actions to truly be able to automate much more within Airtable. So I think the future for Airtable is, I hope, more of the deepening what we've built that already exists and making sure we can empower as many use cases and let anyone build the perfect tool for their workflow.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. It really helps you, bring it all together and being able to be in one place. And then, the last thing that I would ask you is, what is your favorite feature? Explain to us what's your favorite feature inside of Airtable.
Yep, I love Button. Button Field is my favorite. I love Button Field. Button Field, I love it because it's underrated, doesn't get enough love. And so, I don't have like a good, I can show you my bases, but I probably don't have time to get into it. But Button Field, let me just open up a base here. Button Field lets you kind of, it's a little complicated. It lets you trigger custom webhooks. It lets you search a specific URL, lets you open specific apps. And so Button Field is my kind of, it's definitely not the flashiest feature. I have gotten so much value out of Button Field, and it's the little train that could, in my view. But if I put my Airtable hat on, automations, apps, sync, Airtable's platform is probably what gives me most excitement of just truly what people are going to be able to build over the coming years to really democratize software creation. So personally, Button, as an Airtable employee and user, Airtable's platform is what excites me most, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I've used one of my favorite features is being able to include the button and allowing people to utilize and have easier access with our community. So that's really awesome. Really great. Any final words that you have at all for people, or
no,
advice you want to give anyone and when utilizing Airtable?
Yeah, I think, go to airtable.com/learn. I run a weekly stream on Twitch. So it's twitch.tv/automate all the things TV, or just go to AATT.io, where I have 40 past streams and probably doing another 40 this year. And get involved on Twitter. I am always looking to hear from everyone. Ask me questions on Twitter. I'm here for you, and keep learning Airtable. I just love this tool, and I hope that this was at least giving folks what is possible. So I'm always amazed at what people build on top of Airtable. So I'm excited to see what folks from your crowd build on Airtable. So
thank you so much. And so Aron, we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day, jumping in. He'll be on for a few minutes on the networking session that's coming up. If a few of you have additional questions you wanted to ask directly to him, he'll join for a few minutes. But we have networking session coming up with No Code Devs as well. And then that's with Art West. He'll be joining here as well. So listen, check back on the event page. A lot going on. We have Softer later this afternoon. Softer is the platform that allows you to build beautiful web apps using your Airtables. So super excited to show you guys that. And then also back with Doc Williams, he will build out Softer using Typeform and Airtables for you. So get pumped up. We have a good rest of the day going for day 7 of No Code Week. And yeah, check it out. And don't forget, sign up for your free profile on StartupStarter, and you'll be able to get $2,000 in credits from Airtable. That's actually a lot. So check that out. Create your membership. Aron, thank you so much. We appreciate your time. And we'll see you here in a second in the Beam conferencing room.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Yep. Everyone go to co-working and choose a conferencing room. We'll be there in a moment. Take care.
Welcome to Airtable. With Airtable, you can organize anything. Projects, customers, ideas, you name it. It's as straightforward as a spreadsheet, but gives you the power of a database to work exactly how you want to work. Whether you're managing a successful record label, planning an upcoming move, or wrangling all of your team's deadlines for an upcoming rocket launch, it's easy to organize anything that you can imagine. It's not just numbers and text. With Airtable, you can add rich field types like checkboxes, drop-downs, long notes, links to other tables, and even drag and drop file attachments, complete with document and image previews. You're not limited to only seeing things in a grid. You can group and organize your records, show them on a calendar, arrange them in a gallery, and embed them onto your website. You can even create and share a form, and the responses will feed directly into Airtable. Use Airtable on your own, or collaborate with a team to get things done. You can tag collaborators and message with them directly in the context of your information. And all your changes are securely saved and instantly synced across all devices and teammates, so you're always on the same page. Airtable. Organize anything you can imagine.